This session is Evasion of high-end IDPS devices in the age of IPv6, and your speakers are Antonius, Atlasis, and Enno. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Good morning, everybody. Good to see so many people, as IPv6 is still considered in some heads as a niche thing, which from our perspective it isn't, and I'm glad to see so many people for our talk on evasion of high-end IDPS devices by means of playing with IPv6. My name is Enno, this is Antonius. We both have a long history in protocol and device research, and we both have a strong affinity to IPv6, which then those two things give an interesting combination. Looking with the eyes of a security researcher at this bloated thing called IPv6 might produce interesting results, which we are going to discuss in this talk, which is split into three main pieces. There is first like an introductory problem statement of some elements of the IPv6 protocol specification which can lead to security problems. After that, we'll discuss some results in practice, and obviously we'll derive some conclusions and provide some mitigation advice. IPv6 is important. It's growing steadily. In Germany, where I come from, we have right now about 10% IPv6 deployment on broadband subscribers, so we have a higher rate when it comes to content and transit. So it's there. It's eminent. It will touch all of our lives in the next few years. There will be the Internet of Things, which even adds more momentum to IPv6. And looking at IPv6, looking at the way how an IPv6 datagram is composed, it turns out that to some degree it looks like this nice German train. There is a main element driving the whole thing, and after this main element, in a chained way, there is more elements, which gives an exact description of how an IPv6 packet might look like. The main difference here to IPv4 is that in IPv6 there is the concept of so-called extension headers. Next to the what is called, or what we call, the main header of an IPv6 datagram, additional headers can be added to serve different specific purposes, to specify a routing path, to transport information which is either intended to be processed by all nodes on the traffic path or just the destination node. There might be security information in those headers for IPsec purposes. So after the main header, there is the option, they don't have to be used, but there is the option of using so-called extension headers. And these extension headers, actually looking closer at the RFC specifying those, which is the RFC 2460, which is a bloated document of like 40, 50 pages with even pseudocode in it describing how certain packets could be built. And once those are built, they have to be processed and parsed. These extension headers are the source of three main problems. The first one is, when it comes to extension headers, there's a high degree, say, of flexibility, and things can vary. There might be variable types of extension headers. They might have variable sizes. They might occur in a variable order. That main RFC, which I mentioned, specifies a recommended order, but that is just a recommendation. And for one specific header, the so-called hop-by-hop header, HBH, that one has to follow the main header. And there is for more headers, like the routing header or the first so-called destination header, there is specifications where they have to occur, but there might be more of those. There is even a second variant of that thing that I call a destination header, which we are going to see in practice in some minutes. So the order is not strictly specified, which is even, say, increased as for the security impact, given they can occur multiple times within a packet. And they might contain variable fields, type length value fields, and those of you who have some knowledge, say, in protocol security, know that type length value fields from a security perspective sometimes smell a bit. So there is a high degree of how many, how big, which order, and what they contain, which in the end of the day means an IPv6 packet can somewhat be looked at as a function of several input variables. Second, fragmentation might occur. In general, in the IPv6 world, fragmentation is not supposed to happen. But not being supposed to happen doesn't mean it cannot exist. And IPv6 goes back to the 90s, where there was a strong belief in what is called Postal's principle. Be conservative in what you send, but be liberal in what you accept. This is the mindset that has formed IPv6, which means, say, it's open for fragmentation. It's not supposed to be there, but still all stacks are expected to cope with a fragmented packet once they occur. And again, that main ROC specifies once fragmentation occurs, there is two main parts of the datagram to be fragmented. That is first the so-called unfragmentable part, which carries the main header, and the next following ones, those which are meant to be processed by all nodes on the traffic path. And the rest of the fragment, which can be composed of the upper layer payload, say the TCP payload or UDP payload, and potentially additional extension headers, this thing can be fragmented. So in addition to that variable size, order, occurrences, these things can even be split into several fragments. This adds to the, say, problem space.
Okay. Now let's see yet another problem. It is regarding how these IPv6 extension headers are chained together. Each extension header has its own, let's say, protocol value. It serves the same purpose as it was the case in IPv4. And each extension header has a field, the so-called next header value field, which points to the next extension header. So, for example, the value of the destination options header is 60. So, the routing extension header in our example has a field, a next header value field, whose value is 60, which points to the next one. It's like a list of pointers. Each pointer points to the next extension header. This seems quite simple, and it doesn't cause any problems until we reach, again, fragmentation. Now, let's assume that we have the fragmentable part displayed in the top of the figure. This consists of the destination options header plus the TCP header and the payload. And this one has to be fragmented in our scenario. So fragment one will consist of the IPv6 main header plus the routing header plus the fragment extension header, which is added because now the fragmentation fields are not included in the main header as it used to be in IPv4. And then we have the two fragmentable parts. The fragment extension header is going to point to the next headers. If I'm going to ask you, for example, the first fragment, what is going to be the next header value of the IPv6 fragment header? This one over here. Taking into account that the value of the destination options header is 60. I suppose that you are going to answer that this value will be 60. Now, regarding the second one, the second fragment carries the TCP header plus its payload. So, if I'm going to ask you what is going to be here, and taking into account that the TCP protocol value is 6, what are you going to ask to respond now? What will be the value here? In this one, the second fragment. If you are going to say 6, because the next header is TCP, it will be wrong. It should be 60 again. It should point again to the destination options header. It should point again to the first fragment, to the first extension header of the fragmentable part. Actually, the recipient should ignore any next header values except from the first one, from the very first one. This is yet another gray area. another gray area that you can play with it in order to cause security issues.
So for those of you familiar with the LangSec initiative, you might certainly note that LangSec mindset wasn't present when all this was specified. For those of you who are not, it might make sense to go to www.langsec.org. That said, let's summarize for the moment that we have a certain mess here with a high degree of variance of different parts of the IPv6 packet. And all these, say, different parts with their variable size, order occurrences, and so on, might even be combined in different ways, in different order, with changing header fields pointing to the next ones. And you might already sense this can be the cause for problems. We have a fundamental problem actually here. There's a high degree of flexibility and freedom, which in general is a good thing in life. In general, that's a good thing in the internet and in communication. Still, for security, a high degree of flexibility and freedom might come into the way how security enforcement is happening today. As one might ask, what could possibly go wrong? And thinking about how security enforcement happens today, looking at, say, firewalls or IDPS devices, security enforcement relies on, network security enforcement often relies on, like, identifying certain elements or properties of a packet, say for a stateful firewall, identifying, okay, which port is used, what are the flags of this packet, what is the sequence number. For IDPS devices, identify signatures and then act upon this identified properties. Now, if there was a high degree of flexibility and freedom, this might make this type of identification, which might even happen in say, specialized hardware like FPGAs looking at certain offsets. All these types of devices looking for fixed properties and trying to enforce security based on what they see might, say, have problems with that high degree of flexibility and freedom. And this is exactly what was the main question of our research. What happens if we, say, compose packets built upon variations and flexible content of these exact fields that we have described?
Okay, and now if you believe that all this is just a theory, if you think so, I'm afraid that you are wrong. There is a tool out there. It's called Chiron. I have written this tool in order to allow you to build more or less any kind of IPv6 chain you want. You can combine the exception headers in many ways. You can vary the order, the number of occurrences, etc., all the things that we discussed up to now. And we use this tool for different purposes. First of all, for security assessment, to test devices like IDPS devices. And secondly, when you find an issue, when you find a technique to evade, for example, an IDPS device, there is also a module there, a layer 3 proxy, which allows you to use this specific technique in order to evade a device by launching any type of attack, actually, from simple port scanning to SQL injection, from layer 4 to layer 7, actually. This tool is going to be renewed and will be published a newer version very shortly. But let's show you for the time being what are the results. Okay, we're going to describe several different cases. We have tested several IDPS devices, both open source and commercial ones. Due to time constraints, we are going to show you just some results. First of all, let's talk about Suricata. Suricata is an open source IDPS supported by the Homeland Security. First, we tested the version 2.0.1. It was the previous one. It was the latest one until June, actually. And we found out that by adding just an IPv6 destination options header, which was a little bit long, let's say it was padded by 6 or more octets of bytes, and by fragmenting this chain in 7 or more fragments, Suricata could could be evaded as long as these fragments were sent misordered. I'm going to show you a Wireshark output here, how these packets look like. This is the technique that we used to evade the previous version of Suricata. If you can observe the offsets here, you can see that first we send the last fragment with offset equals to 9, then offset equals to 1, and so on and so on. So it was just this combination of accession headers, fragmentation, and misorder fragments that enable us to evade Suricata. Thankfully, the guys, the developers, reacted really fast. They had patched this in just a few days and released a newer version, 2.0.2. But it seems that there is such a mess out there regarding the implementation of IPv6 accession headers that even this version can also be evaded. Yep. So, thanks to the developers, it was fixed very quickly. But now we're going to show you in a live demo how you can evade even the latest version. I have two consoles here. In the one console, I have an output of Suricata alerts. I have a Wireshark output here. Okay. At first, I'm going to trigger an alert on purpose to see that everything works fine. Suricata is not placed in line, so it's not going to block any traffic, but it's going to trigger an alert. We have implemented a rule here that detects any traffic, any TCP traffic pointed to TCP port 80. So any traffic that it is potential HTTP traffic. So by sending this traffic, you can see here the right console that there is an alert which says test www activity. And of course, you can see in the Wireshark output the SYN packet that I sent, this one. And below this, a reset tag packet from my target, because it is a reset tag because I don't run actually a web server, but it is a demonstration that the packet passes through and I have a response back, but an alert is triggered, as you can see here. It just happened that Suricata is not in line. Now I'm going to send a similar packet, but this time by manipulating a little bit the IPv6 chain. You can see again that I have sent the SYN packet. I have received the reset tag packet from my target, which means that the packet reached the target and it triggered the response, but there is no alert here. So Suricata could be evaded. We have reported this issue to the Suricata developers. It has been fixed. It is available in the GitHub repository, and they're going to release a newer version officially either this Friday or on Monday at the latest. Now let's go to a commercial device, a high-end commercial device, the well-known HP TippingPoint. It was in February of 2014 that we found the issue, the first issue. The issue is displayed in the figure. If you recall, the next header values that we discussed at the beginning of the presentation, in our example, as we explained, it should be 60 and 60. If you send a 60 and 6, as it is here, 60 and 6, just two simple fragments with just a destination options header, we found out that TippingPoint could be evaded. Again, we reported the issue to the TippingPoint, and they fixed it in March. And they released officially the patch about a month later. So this issue was resolved. The problem is that, as you said, there is quite a mess regarding accession headers. So there is yet another way to evade the latest version of TippingPoint again.
So we have a TippingPoint device, a mid-size enterprise device, S110, sitting here. It's configured in a certain way, which is not of relevance for the demo. Just note that no HTTP traffic should be able to get through the device. which we will have a look at. We will again, Antonius will send some packets. I have a Wireshark running here. We will see what gets through to my laptop, which would be the victim. Say a web server which has to be attacked by whatever kind of SQL injection, XXS, whatever, which is going to be protected by this one. First, once Antonius sends a certain packet.
Yeah, I sent just a simple TCP SYN packet to port 80. As you can see from my Wireshark output, I can do it again very quickly. And we will see that there is no packet received.
We see that we don't see anything, so apparently, I mean, you have to trust us, the device is set up correctly, it is. Nothing gets through, so expected behavior. But once the packet is again modified in a certain way.
I'm going to manipulate it a little bit. I have cleared the Wireshark, or sending it again. And you can see that now I receive a reset tag from my target.
So the packet apparently gets through. I mean, there's the reset sent as there's no web server running, but for the purpose of this demo, this is irrelevant. Suffice to note and to say the packet gets through just by a certain combination of, as you can see here, it's fragmented, and taking a quick closer look, it turns out there was a certain combination of a fragmentation header and destination header, and this is sufficient to fly under the radar. And we could get, by adding, say, these types of headers, we could get any packet, any type of attack packet to fly under the radar of TippingPoint device running latest code as of today. Again, we reported this to TippingPoint like 10 weeks ago. They got back to us, they were working on it, they have a fix available, they have a patch available, it will be released, say, in the second half of August. So today it's not yet released, that's why we didn't discuss the details in very much detail. But given the documentation of our work is around, it's like RTFD, and you smart guys might be able to figure out on your own what we just did and what happened. That said, let's discuss mitigation approaches. Those can be split into three areas. First of all, in the ITF world, say RFC 2460 is not an example of an RFC providing good guidance and clear guidance. It doesn't even use the RFC notation with words and capitals. So there is too few guidance and strictness from the standards themselves. Then our impression is that vendors could improve their quality assurance efforts, especially when it comes to devices like this one. We have tested, by the way, some SourceFire stuff as well, but we have not included this for time reasons. There are issues in that space as well. Wait for our upcoming blog posts for the topic. So quality assurance on the vendor side. For you guys from enterprise organizations or from organizations acting as users kind of these devices, be aware there is a whole mess when it comes to extension headers and fragmentations causing security problems. So drop those extension headers which you don't need at your network boundaries, which right now are all of them. There is no production use of any extension headers going through network boundaries. Drop them. Which is, by the way, what many large organizations already do. That said, there's another takeaway we would like to provide. That is IPv6 is a huge, complex thing. There's lots of research areas. So if you want to be here in 1 year, looking at IPv6 might be a good idea. And for you, all of you will face IPv6 in the near future. So do your homework, read the specs, build a lab, play with the stuff, and get familiar with IPv6, as otherwise you might be exposed. Thanks for listening. So we have like 3 to 5 minutes for Q&A. We will around for the whole conference anyway, so feel free to approach us at any point to discuss stuff. No questions? This might be a good sign, or not. In any case, another 10 seconds to give you the opportunity. Enjoy Black Hat. Have fun. Thank you.